7 seconds where cars will lift from highways, where children will float from playgrounds, where the ocean itself will abandon the seabed. And then gravity returns. Everything falls. 40 to 60 million dead according to the claims. Infrastructure destroyed. Economic collapse lasting a decade or more. The source of this prediction is allegedly a classified NASA document called Project Anchor, a secret $89 billion program that has supposedly been running since 2014. A program designed not to prevent the disaster, but merely to help select government officials and essential personnel survive it, while the rest of us remain deliberately uninformed. This is a conspiracy theory. Let me be absolutely clear about that from the start. NASA has officially denied it. Physicists have debunked it. Fact. Checkers across the globe have torn it apart. There is no Project Anchor. There are no leaked documents. The physics described in the viral post fundamentally misunderstand how gravity works. And yet, the story spread like wildfire. Millions of views, thousands of shares, comments filled with genuine fear from people who believed every word. Why does a claim this scientifically absurd gain such traction? What is it about gravity and black holes and government secrets that captures the human imagination so completely? In this investigation, we're going to do something different. We're going to take this conspiracy theory seriously. Not in the sense of believing it, but in the sense of examining it thoroughly. We will trace its origins and expose its flaws. We will explain the real science of gravity and gravitational waves, and then we will do something the conspiracy theorists never actually did. We will calculate what would genuinely happen if Earth somehow lost gravity for 7 seconds. The answer might surprise you. It is both less dramatic and more terrifying than the viral posts suggest. This is the story of Project Anchor, the conspiracy that science forgot. The rumor first emerged on social media in late December 2024 and early January 2025. A video appeared on TikTok from an account that has since been deleted. The video showed a man sitting silently in a car while overlaid text delivered the alarming claim. On August 12, 2026, the world will lose gravity for 7 seconds. NASA knows. They are preparing but will not tell us why. The accompanying caption provided what appeared to be specific details, chillingly specific details, the kind that make conspiracy theories feel credible to those unfamiliar with how easily such specifics can be fabricated. According to the posts, a secret NASA document titled Project Anchor leaked online in November 2024. The project allegedly has a budget of $89 billion. Its stated goal is to survive a 7.3-second gravitational anomaly, expected on August 12, 2026, at 14:33 Universal Coordinated Time. That translates to roughly 10:33 in the morning Eastern Time, 7:33 Pacific, an ordinary Wednesday afternoon in much of Europe. The timeline painted by the conspiracy was precise. During seconds 1 and 2, everything not secured would begin to rise. People, vehicles, animals, all lifting from the surface of Earth. During seconds 3 and 4, objects would continue ascending, reaching heights of 15 to 20 meters, that is roughly 50 to 65 feet, the height of a 5 or 6-story building. During seconds 5 and 6, panic and chaos would ensue as people struck ceilings and objects collided mid-air. At second 7, gravity returns. Everything falls from height. The predicted casualties range from 40 to 60 million deaths, primarily from falls. Additional consequences supposedly include infrastructure destruction, an economic collapse lasting more than a decade, mass panic on a global scale. The alleged cause is perhaps the most creative element of the conspiracy. 2 gravitational waves from colliding black holes supposedly intersecting at Earth. The posts claim this intersection was predicted in 2019, with a 94.7% probability. NASA has allegedly known about this for 5 years and has been quietly preparing ever since. What is NASA doing according to the conspiracy? Building underground bunkers for essential personnel, developing securing systems for buildings. The posts claim that spots in these bunkers are reserved for government leaders, scientists, military personnel, and selected citizens with genetic diversity. A darkly eugenic touch that adds to the sinister tone. Why the silence? The conspiracy offers an answer that sounds almost reasonable if you do not think about it too hard. An announcement would trigger mass panic and chaos. Better to have 40 million unprepared victims than 8 billion in a state of panic. The posts even mention an independent physicist who supposedly confirmed the intersection of gravitational waves. His paper was retracted. He has since disappeared. It is a compelling narrative. Government secrets, scientific cover-ups, a countdown to catastrophe. All the elements that make conspiracy theories spread. The post concluded with a civilian survival protocol: stay indoors with a low ceiling, lie on the floor face down, hold on to something secured. 20 months until the event. NASA knows. Governments are preparing. They will not tell you. Within days, the claim had spread across multiple platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, which is now called X, Facebook, Reddit. Each share added new believers. Each comment section became a battleground between skeptics and the convinced. The original account that posted the video disappeared in early January 2025. This deletion only fueled the conspiracy. If it was fake, why would they remove it? If it was real, perhaps they were silenced. Of course, accounts get deleted for countless mundane reasons: violating terms of service, users simply abandoning platforms, technical issues. But to conspiracy-minded individuals, disappearance equals confirmation. Fact-checkers responded quickly. Snopes published a detailed debunking. IFL Science ran an article whose title pulled no punches: "No, the Earth will not lose gravity for 7 seconds," on August 12, 2026. That is nonsense, and here is why. News organizations from Yahoo to WION to local stations across America addressed the claim. A NASA spokesperson provided a statement via email confirming that the rumor was not true. The Earth will not lose gravity on August 12, 2026. The spokesperson explained that Earth gravity, or total gravitational force, is determined by its mass. The only way for the Earth to lose gravity would be for the Earth system to lose mass. The combined mass of its core mantle, crust, ocean, terrestrial water, and atmosphere. Searches across Bing, DuckDuckGo, Google, and Yahoo found no reputable results about a Project Anchor leaking online during or after November 2024. Similar searches on Facebook and X for 2024 and 2025 turned up no posts discussing Project Anchor before the viral video appeared. In other words, there was no leak. There was only a claim of a leak. But here is the troubling part. The debunking did not matter to many believers. Fact checks were dismissed as part of the cover-up. NASA denial was expected. Of course they would deny it. Scientists explaining why the physics was impossible were labeled as shills or agents of disinformation. The conspiracy found particularly fertile ground because it connected to a real astronomical event. On August 12, 2026, a total solar eclipse will actually occur. This is not a secret. It has been known and predicted for decades. The eclipse path will cross the Arctic Ocean, Greenland, Iceland, the Atlantic Ocean, Portugal, and northern Spain. It will be the first total solar eclipse visible from mainland Europe since 1999. Eclipse dates have long attracted conspiracy theories and doomsday predictions. Something about the sun going dark speaks to primal human fears. The Project Anchor conspiracy cleverly latched onto this real event, giving it an anchor point in reality. A date people could look up. A celestial occurrence that felt appropriately ominous. The specificity of the details made the hoax more convincing to some. $89 billion feels like a real budget number. 1433 UTC sounds like an actual timestamp. 94.7% probability appears scientific. These fake specifics are a hallmark of effective misinformation. They create an illusion of precision that tricks the brain into accepting claims it would otherwise reject. But none of these numbers came from anywhere real. They were invented whole cloth. There is no Project Anchor. There was no leak. There is no physicist who disappeared. The probability calculation is meaningless because the scenario it describes is physically impossible. Why do people believe? That question might be more interesting than the conspiracy itself. We live in an era of declining institutional trust. Governments lie, corporations deceive, scientists are sometimes wrong and occasionally corrupt. These facts are true, but they do not mean every claim of conspiracy is valid. The existence of real cover-ups does not validate imaginary ones. The Project Anchor conspiracy taps into several deep psychological currents: fear of cosmic catastrophe, distrust of authority, the appeal of secret knowledge, the desire to be among those who know the truth while others remain ignorant. It offers a story where the enemy is identifiable and the threat is specific. In a world of diffuse anxieties, there is something almost comforting about having a concrete date to fear. August 12th, 2026. Mark your calendar, or better yet, understand why you do not need to. In the next chapter, we are going to dissect Project Anchor piece by piece. We will examine what a real leaked government document looks like versus this fabrication. We will trace the anatomy of this conspiracy theory and understand why it was constructed the way it was. We will see the techniques used to make nonsense look like science. The truth is often less dramatic than fiction. But in this case, the truth about gravity and gravitational waves is far more fascinating than any conspiracy could invent. and understanding that truth is the first step toward inoculating yourself against the next viral hoax, because there will always be another one. The August 12th date approaches, the eclipse will occur, gravity will remain exactly as it has for 4.5 billion years, and somewhere on the internet a new conspiracy will be born connecting real events to imaginary threats, packaged in the language of science that sounds just plausible enough to spread. Knowledge is the only defense. Let us build some together. Project Anchor. Even the name sounds legitimate. Anchors hold things in place. They prevent drift. They provide stability. If you were designing a fictional government program to counteract a loss of gravity, you could hardly pick a better name. This is not an accident. Conspiracy theories that spread successfully share common architectural features. They borrow the language and structure of real institutions while filling that structure with fabricated content. They provide enough specific details to feel researched, while making those details impossible to verify. They tap into existing fears and distrust, and perhaps most importantly, they are unfalsifiable. Any evidence against them becomes evidence of the cover-up. Project Anchor follows this blueprint perfectly. Let us begin with what a real leaked government document actually looks like. In recent decades, we have seen numerous genuine leaks of classified information. The Pentagon Papers in 1971, WikiLeaks releases beginning in 2006, the Edward Snowden revelations in 2013, the Panama Papers in 2016. These leaks share common characteristics. First, they involve actual documents, photographs or scans of physical papers, digital files with metadata, memos with letterheads and signatures, classification markings in standardized formats. Real leaks come with artifacts that can be examined, analyzed, and authenticated. Second, they are reported by established journalistic organizations. The New York Times broke the Pentagon Papers. The Guardian and Washington Post published the Snowden documents. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists handled the Panama Papers. These outlets have reputations to protect and verification procedures in place. Third, real leaks can be corroborated. Other sources confirm aspects of the information. Timeline and personnel details align with known facts. The content fits within the context of what we already know about the organizations involved. Now consider Project Anchor. There are no documents, not a single page, not a photograph of a memo, not a PDF with classification markings. The entire leak consists of text written in social media posts. Anyone with a phone could have created it in 5 minutes. There is no journalistic outlet that verified or published the information. It emerged on TikTok from an anonymous account that was subsequently deleted. No reporter examined documents. No publication staked its reputation on the accuracy of the claims. There is no corroboration. Searches across all major search engines in all major languages produced no results for Project Anchor prior to the viral posts. No other whistleblower has come forward. No retired NASA employee has confirmed even a hint of the program. No contractor has leaked supplementary information. In an era when secrets are extraordinarily difficult to keep, an $89 billion program apparently left no trace, except for one anonymous social media video. The absence of evidence is not just suspicious, it is damning. Real programs have paper trails. Real programs have employees who talk. Real programs require congressional appropriations that appear in budgets. An $89 billion program would be roughly the same size as the entire annual budget for the Department of Education or the Department of Housing and Urban Development. You cannot hide that. But the conspiracy answers this objection preemptively. Of course there is no evidence. They destroyed it. Of course no one is talking. They were silenced. Of course it is not in the budget. It is a black program with secret funding. The conspiracy is designed to interpret every absence as proof of successful suppression. This is what makes conspiracy theories so resilient and so dangerous. They are immune to counter-evidence because counter-evidence is incorporated into the theory. Let us examine the scientific claims more closely. The conspiracy states that 2 gravitational waves from black holes will intersect at Earth, causing a 7-second loss of gravity. This sentence contains at least 5 fundamental misunderstandings of physics. First, gravitational waves do not intersect in the way described. Gravitational waves are ripples in space-time itself. They propagate outward from their source at the speed of light. When 2 gravitational waves pass through the same region of space, they do not combine into some new catastrophic effect. They superpose, meaning their effects add together temporarily, and then they continue on their separate ways. This is similar to how water waves can pass through each other, without destroying each other. Second, gravitational waves do not cancel out or switch off gravity. They are tiny perturbations on top of the existing gravitational field. Even the most powerful gravitational waves ever detected changed the length of the LIGO detector arms by less than 1,000th the diameter of a proton. These waves stretch and squeeze space-time by incomprehensibly small amounts. They do not turn gravity off. Third gravitational waves cannot be predicted in advance in the way the conspiracy suggests. Gravitational waves travel at the speed of light. We only detect them at the moment they arrive. The LIGO detectors record signals that come from events that happened billions of years ago in distant galaxies. We cannot know a gravitational wave is coming until it gets here, because information about it cannot travel faster than the wave itself. Fourth, NASA does not study gravitational waves. That is the domain of the LIGO-Virgo-Cagra collaboration. These are specialized observatories with precisely calibrated laser interferometers designed to detect changes in length smaller than an atomic nucleus. NASA focuses on space exploration spacecraft and certain astronomical observations. The organizational claim in the conspiracy is simply wrong. Fifth, the timeline is impossible. The conspiracy claims the gravitational wave intersection was predicted in 2019, but gravitational waves from black hole mergers only produce detectable signals in the final fraction of a second before the black holes collide. We cannot see them coming years in advance. This would require physics-defying technology that violates the fundamental nature of how space-time works. The 94.7% probability figure is particularly clever. It sounds scientific. Probability estimates with decimals feel precise and researched. But where did this number come from? What calculation produced it? What were the inputs? The posts never say, because there is no calculation. The number was made up. It exists solely to provide a false sense of scientific legitimacy. The mention of an independent physicist whose paper was retracted and who has since disappeared is another classic conspiracy element. It provides an authority figure to validate the claims while making that figure conveniently unavailable for questions. No name is given, no institution, no paper title, no journal. Nothing that could be verified or falsified. Real retracted papers are public record. Journals announce retractions. The process leaves traces. Scientists do not simply disappear. In an era of social media and digital footprints, making a person vanish is extraordinarily difficult. But the vague reference to a disappeared physicist evokes sinister possibilities without providing anything concrete enough to investigate. The $89 billion budget deserves scrutiny. This is an enormous sum. The entire annual budget of NASA is roughly $25 billion. Project Anchor supposedly cost more than 3 times what NASA spends on everything combined. Yet no one noticed. No congressional appropriation. No journalist found irregularities in government spending. No auditor raised questions. This strains credulity beyond the breaking point. The survival protocol offered in the posts is perhaps the most revealing element. Stay indoors with a low ceiling, lie on the floor face down, hold on to something secured. This advice makes a certain intuitive sense if you do not think about it carefully. But consider the physics being described. If gravity truly turned off, you would not start floating upward. You would continue moving in whatever direction you were already moving due to inertia. Because Earth rotates, you are actually moving with the surface at several hundred miles per hour, depending on your latitude. Without gravity to hold you to the planet, you would not rise gently like a balloon. You would keep moving in a straight, line tangent to Earth's surface while Earth continued to rotate beneath you. The experience would not feel like floating up. It would feel like Earth dropping away from you. A low ceiling would not save you. Lying face down would not help. The physics of the actual scenario, which is impossible anyway, would not work the way the survival protocol suggests. But the protocol serves a purpose. It makes people feel there is something they can do. It transfers the conspiracy from passive fear to active preparation. It creates engagement. The claim about underground bunkers for essential personnel draws on a long tradition of government survival facility conspiracies. There are real continuity of government programs. There are real bunkers. But the idea that secret facilities are being prepared specifically for this event, with spots allocated based on genetic diversity, has no basis in anything except paranoid imagination. The genetic diversity claim is particularly odd. Why would genetic diversity matter for surviving a 7-second event? You either survive the fall, or you do not. Genetics would be relevant for repopulating after an extinction-level event, but 7 seconds of gravity loss followed by a fall would not threaten the human species with extinction. The genetic diversity language seems borrowed from different apocalyptic scenarios and awkwardly grafted onto this one. Why was this conspiracy theory constructed this way? Understanding the architecture helps us recognize similar constructions in the future. The core is a fear. Gravity is fundamental. We do not think about it. It simply is. The idea of gravity suddenly stopping taps into a deep, existential unease about the stability of reality itself. What if the most basic assumptions are wrong? What if the floor we stand on is not guaranteed? The villain is a familiar one: government. NASA specifically carries associations with both awe-inspiring achievement and historical cover-ups. The Apollo moon landing conspiracy theories have primed certain audiences to believe NASA conceals the truth. Using NASA as the villain connects to existing suspicion. The timeline creates urgency without immediacy. August 2026 is close enough to feel relevant, but far enough away that the conspiracy cannot be immediately falsified. This is smart design. A prediction for next week would be quickly disproven. A prediction for a decade away would lack urgency. Roughly 18 to 20 months is the sweet spot. The solar eclipse provides a hook to reality. Real events that people can verify make conspiracy theories stickier. The eclipse will happen. That part is true. Building fiction on a foundation of fact blurs the line between legitimate science and fabrication. The conspiracy spread because it was designed to spread. Every element serves the narrative. Every detail builds engagement. Every objection has a pre-built response. This is sophisticated misinformation, even if the science underlying it is absurdly wrong. In the next chapter, we will turn to what gravity actually is and why it cannot simply switch off. The real science of gravitational attraction is more elegant, more strange and more secure than any conspiracy would have you believe. Understanding how gravity works is the best defense against claims that it could stop working. 4.5 billion years of stable planetary existence did not happen by accident. The force that holds you to Earth right now will be holding you there on August 12, 2026. The eclipse will come, the eclipse will go, and gravity will remain exactly as it has always been. The question is not whether Project Anchor is real. It is not. The question is why so many people wanted to believe it was. Gravity is perhaps the most familiar force in the universe, and simultaneously the least understood. We experience it every moment of every day. We take it entirely for granted, and yet gravity remains one of the deepest mysteries in physics, a force that refuses to fit neatly into our understanding of the other fundamental interactions. To understand why Earth cannot lose gravity for 7 seconds, or any amount of time, we need to understand what gravity actually is. The answer turns out to be stranger and more beautiful than most people realize. Isaac Newton gave us our first mathematical description of gravity in 1687. His law of universal gravitation states that every object with mass attracts every other object with mass. The force of attraction depends on 2 things: the masses of the objects and the distance between them. Double the mass and you double the gravitational pull. Double the distance and the pull drops to 1/4. Newton's equations work extraordinarily well for everyday purposes. They got us to the moon. They predict the orbits of planets with remarkable accuracy. They let us calculate how fast an apple will fall from a tree or how much fuel a rocket needs to escape Earth. But Newton never explained what gravity actually is. He described how it behaves. He quantified its effects. He gave us tools to make predictions. But the mechanism remained mysterious. How does the sun exert a pull on Earth across 93 million miles of empty space? Newton famously said he framed no hypotheses. The math worked. That had to be enough. For more than 200 years, Newton's description sufficed. Then Albert Einstein came along and changed everything. In 1915, Einstein published his general theory of relativity. This was not merely a refinement of Newton. It was a completely different way of understanding gravity. Einstein proposed that gravity is not actually a force at all. It is a consequence of the geometry of space-time itself. This requires some unpacking. Space and time are not separate things. They are woven together into a single fabric called space-time. This fabric can be curved and distorted by the presence of mass and energy. Objects with mass do not pull on other objects. Instead, they warp the space-time around them. Other objects then move through this warped space-time, following the straightest possible paths through a curved landscape. Think of it like a bowling ball placed on a stretched rubber sheet. The ball creates a depression in the sheet. If you roll a marble across the sheet, the marble curves toward the bowling ball. Not because the bowling ball is pulling it, but because the marble is following the curved surface. It is taking the most natural path through a warped geometry. Earth does not fall toward the sun because the sun is pulling it. Earth falls toward the sun because the sun warps space-time in its vicinity, and Earth is following a curved path through that warped geometry. What we perceive as the force of gravity is actually the natural motion of objects through curved space-time. This insight has been confirmed by countless experiments over the past century. General relativity predicts phenomena that Newtonian gravity cannot explain. The precise orbit of Mercury, the bending of light around massive objects, the existence of gravitational waves, the behavior of GPS satellites which must account for relativistic effects to maintain accuracy. Every test of general relativity has confirmed Einstein was right. So what does this mean for the possibility of gravity switching off? Everything. Gravity in Einstein's framework is not something that can be turned on or off. It is a geometric property of spacetime itself. As long as mass exists, spacetime will be curved around it. As long as spacetime is curved, objects will follow curved paths. There is no switch. There is no control mechanism. Gravity is not being generated by some process that could fail or be interrupted. For Earth to lose gravity, Earth would have to lose its mass, all 6 trillion kilograms of it, instantaneously, without replacement. The rock beneath your feet, the iron in the core, the water in the oceans, the air you breathe, all of it would have to simply cease to exist. This is not merely implausible, it violates the most fundamental laws of physics. Mass cannot be created or destroyed. It can be converted to energy, as Einstein's famous equation E equals mc squared describes. But conversion is not disappearance. The mass becomes energy, which itself has gravitational effects. You cannot make mass simply vanish. Even in the most extreme theoretical scenarios, mass does not disappear without consequences. A supernova destroys a star, but the mass goes somewhere. It becomes an expanding nebula. It forms neutron stars or black holes. It scatters elements across interstellar space. The mass is transformed, but it does not simply stop existing. The Project Anchor conspiracy does not describe Earth losing mass. It describes gravity selectively turning off for 7.3 seconds and then turning back on. This makes no sense within either Newtonian physics or general relativity. There is no mechanism by which such a thing could occur. There is no known physics that even suggests such a mechanism could exist. Could there be physics we do not yet understand? Of course. Science is provisional. Our current theories may be incomplete. But invoking unknown physics to justify a specific prediction with specific timing is not science. It is wishful thinking dressed in scientific language. The conspiracy claims that gravitational waves from black holes will somehow cause this effect. But gravitational waves do not switch off gravity. They are ripples in the curvature of space-time, small temporary fluctuations propagating outward at the speed of light. When a gravitational wave passes through space, it causes matter to stretch and squeeze by infinitesimal amounts. It does not eliminate the underlying gravitational field. Consider the gravitational waves detected by LIGO in 2015. These came from 2 black holes colliding 1.3 billion light-years away. Each black hole had a mass roughly 30 times that of our Sun. Their collision released energy equivalent to 3 solar masses in a fraction of a second. This was one of the most violent events detectable in the universe. By the time those gravitational waves reached Earth, they caused LEGO's 4-kilometer-long detector arms to change length by less than 1,000th the diameter of a proton. That is the entire measurable effect of a catastrophic black hole merger over 1 billion light-years away. A stretching so small that it took the most precise measurement instruments ever built to detect it. Gravitational waves do not switch off gravity. They are incredibly faint perturbations superimposed on the existing gravitational field. Even if 2 gravitational waves somehow arrived at Earth simultaneously, which does not work the way the conspiracy describes their effects, would be far too small to notice without specialized instruments. You would not float. Your coffee would not levitate. The oceans would not rise from their beds. The physics is unambiguous. The kind of event described in Project Anchor cannot happen. But let us push further. Let us steelman the conspiracy as much as possible and ask whether any future physics could potentially enable such an event. Physicists have speculated about modifications to gravity. Various theories extend general relativity in different directions. Some propose additional dimensions of space. Some suggest gravity might behave differently at very small or very large scales. Some attempt to unify gravity with quantum mechanics in ways that might reveal new phenomena. None of these theories predict or even allow for temporary localized disappearance of gravity. They predict subtle deviations from general relativity in extreme conditions, different behavior near singularities, modified equations at cosmological scales. They do not predict that gravitational waves could switch off Earth's gravity for 7 seconds. Furthermore, any theory that did predict such an effect would need to explain why we have never observed anything like it before. Earth has been orbiting the Sun for 4.5 billion years. Gravitational waves from cosmic events have been passing through our solar system for that entire time. If gravitational waves could cause temporary gravity loss, we would have seen evidence in the geological record. Inexplicable mass extinctions, sudden changes in Earth's rotation, signs of atmospheric loss and recovery. None of these patterns exist in the fossil record or geological strata. The absence of evidence is evidence of absence when the evidence would be impossible to miss. 7 seconds of zero gravity would cause effects that would be preserved in rock for millions of years. We see nothing. There is another angle to consider. The conspiracy claims that NASA predicted this event in 2019 and has known about it for years. But gravitational waves cannot be predicted in advance. They travel at the speed of a light. Information about them cannot reach us before they do. We detect gravitational waves at the moment they arrive, not before. The LIGO detectors do not warn us that a gravitational wave is coming. They register the wave as it passes through. The signal from two black holes merging 1.3 billion years ago arrived in 2015 because it took 1.3 billion years for the gravitational waves to travel from the collision site to Earth. We had no way of knowing it was coming until it got here. If some gravitational event could theoretically cause problems for Earth, the very first indication we would have would be the event itself happening. There would be no years of advance warning, no time to build bunkers, no Project Anchor. The physics does not allow it. This is not a limitation of our technology. It is a fundamental property of space-time itself. Nothing can travel faster than light. Information about gravitational disturbances propagates at light speed via gravitational waves themselves. Prediction is impossible. The conspiracy gets the science not just wrong, but backwards. It describes physics that violates relativity while claiming to be based on gravitational wave predictions that are only possible within general relativity. The internal contradictions are glaring to anyone with physics training. Why does any of this matter? Because understanding real science is the only reliable defense against fake science. When someone claims that gravity will switch off for 7 seconds, you need the tools to recognize that claim as nonsense. Those tools are conceptual knowledge of what gravity is, familiarity with how gravitational waves work, awareness of what can and cannot be predicted. The conspiracy preys on scientific ignorance. Most people do not know what gravitational waves are. Most people have never thought deeply about the nature of gravity. Most people trust that if something sounds scientific and specific, it must have some basis in reality. It does not. The beauty of actual physics is that it provides reliable knowledge. General relativity has been tested for over a century. GPS satellites confirm it dozens of times per second. Gravitational wave detections match theoretical predictions with stunning precision. This is not guesswork. This is accumulated, verified, tested understanding of how the universe works. That understanding says gravity cannot switch off. Period. In the next chapter, we will dive deeper into gravitational waves. We will explore what they actually are, how they are created, what happens when they reach Earth. The real science is far more fascinating than any conspiracy, and understanding it gives you the power to recognize nonsense when you see it. Gravity holds you to Earth right now. It held your ancestors. It will hold your descendants. The force that Newton quantified and Einstein explained is not going anywhere. August 12th, 2026 will be an ordinary day in every gravitational respect. The eclipse will be extraordinary. The gravity will be exactly the same. September 14th, 2015, 5:51 in the morning Eastern Time. A signal arrives at two identical facilities in Livingston, Louisiana and Hanford, Washington. The signal is almost impossibly faint. A stretching and squeezing of the detector arms by less than 1/1000th the width of a proton. But it is real, and it changes everything. For the first time in human history, we have directly detected gravitational waves. Ripples in the fabric of space-time itself. Einstein predicted them exactly 100 years earlier. He also believed they would never be found. The effects were too subtle. The technology was insufficient. The universe had kept this secret beyond the reach of human instruments, until that moment. The signal came from two black holes spiraling toward each other and merging 1.3 billion light-years away. Each black hole had a mass roughly 30 times that of our Sun. As they circled each other faster and faster, losing energy by radiating gravitational waves, they drew closer together. In the final fraction of a second before collision, they were orbiting at nearly half the speed of light. Then, impact. The two black holes merged into a single, larger black hole, releasing energy equivalent to 3 solar masses in a burst of gravitational radiation. This collision was among the most powerful events detectable in the universe. The peak power output in gravitational waves exceeded the combined luminosity of all the stars in the observable universe, more than 50 times greater. This was not a subtle occurrence. It was cataclysmic beyond human comprehension. And yet by the time those gravitational waves reached Earth, after traveling for 1.3 billion years, they were so faint that detecting them required the most precise measurement ever achieved. The change in length of the LIGO detector arms was equivalent to measuring the distance to the nearest star Alpha Centauri to within a few microns, a precision that Einstein himself believed impossible. This is the reality of gravitational waves. They carry immense energy at their source. They propagate through the universe at the speed of light, carrying information about the most violent events in the cosmos. But by the time they arrive here from distant sources, they are incomprehensibly weak. Let us understand what gravitational waves actually are. According to Einstein's general theory of relativity, mass and energy curve spacetime, this curvature is what we perceive as gravity. When massive objects accelerate, this curvature changes. The changes propagate outward through spacetime like ripples on a pond. These propagating changes in spacetime curvature are gravitational waves. Every accelerating mass generates gravitational waves. Earth generates them as it orbits the sun. You generate them when you wave your hand. But the waves produced by ordinary objects are immeasurably small. To produce detectable gravitational waves, you need tremendous mass, undergoing tremendous acceleration. The most powerful sources of gravitational waves are compact binary systems. 2 neutron stars orbiting each other. 2 black holes spiraling toward merger. A black hole swallowing a neutron star. These objects have masses comparable to stars compressed into volumes comparable to cities. Their gravitational fields are immense. When they orbit each other, their acceleration is extreme. As these compact objects circle each other, they emit gravitational waves. This emission carries energy away from the system. The loss of energy causes the objects to spiral closer together. The closer they get, the faster they orbit. The faster they orbit, the more gravitational waves they emit. This is a runaway process. In the final stages, the objects are completing orbits, hundreds of times per second. Then they merge. The gravitational wave signal from such a merger has a distinctive shape. It starts faint and low frequency. As the objects spiral closer, the frequency increases. The amplitude grows. Scientists call this a chirp because when converted to sound, it resembles a rising tone. The chirp crescendos at the moment of the merger. Then it rapidly fades as the combined object settles into a stable configuration. LIGO detects gravitational waves using laser interferometry. The basic principle is straightforward. Split a laser beam in 2. Send the beams down 2 perpendicular arms, each 4 kilometers long. Reflect them back with mirrors. Recombine them. If the arms are exactly the same length, the beams interfere in a specific pattern. If one arm becomes slightly longer or shorter than the other, the interference pattern changes. A gravitational wave passing through the detector stretches space in one direction while compressing it in the perpendicular direction. This changes the relative lengths of the detector arms. The change is minuscule, smaller than the diameter of a proton, but the laser interferometer can detect it. Since 2015, the LIGO collaboration joined by Virgo in Italy and Kagra in Japan has detected dozens of gravitational wave events. Black hole mergers of various sizes, neutron star collisions, hybrid mergers of a black hole swallowing a neutron star. Each detection teaches us something new about the universe. Now let us connect this to the Project Anchor conspiracy. The conspiracy claims that 2 gravitational waves from black holes will intersect at Earth, causing a 7-second loss of gravity. This claim misunderstands gravitational waves at multiple levels. First, gravitational waves do not intersect in a way that could cause catastrophic effects. When 2 waves pass through the same region of space, they superpose. Their effects add together momentarily. Then they continue on their separate paths, unchanged. This is similar to how sound waves can pass through each other, or water waves can cross without interacting. Superposition does not create some new amplified wave. It certainly does not cancel out the underlying gravitational field. Second, even if 2 powerful gravitational waves arrived simultaneously, their combined effect would still be incredibly small. The strongest gravitational waves we have ever detected change detector lengths by about 1 part in 10 to the 21st power. Even amplified by superposition, the effect would be far too small to notice without specialized instruments. Your coffee cup would not lift from the table. You would not float from your chair. The oceans would not rise. The effect would be entirely imperceptible to any human sense. Third gravitational waves cannot be predicted years in advance. The Project Anchor conspiracy claims this intersection was predicted in 2019 with 94.7% probability. This is impossible. Gravitational waves travel at the speed of the light. We cannot know they are coming before they arrive because information about them cannot travel faster than the waves themselves. Consider what prediction would require. To know that gravitational waves will arrive on a specific date, you would need to observe the event that produced them before the waves reach Earth. But any observation would rely on light or electromagnetic signals, which also travel at light speed. You would see the event and feel the gravitational waves at the same moment. There is no advance warning possible. In fact, for many gravitational wave sources, we cannot observe them electromagnetically at all. Black hole mergers produce no light. They are dark events detectable only through their gravitational radiation. The first we know of such an event is when the waves reach our detectors. The conspiracy mentions that NASA predicted this, but NASA does not study gravitational waves. That is the domain of LIGO, which is funded by the National Science Foundation and operated jointly by Caltech and MIT. Virgo is operated by European collaboration. Kegra is run by Japan. NASA is focused on space exploration and certain astronomical observations, not gravitational wave detection. This is a small error, but it reveals that whoever created the Project Anchor hoax did not understand the basic landscape of gravitational physics. They associated NASA with science generally, without knowing which organizations actually work on gravitational waves. Fourth, the idea of gravitational waves switching off Earth's gravity misunderstands what gravitational waves do. They are perturbations in space-time curvature. They stretch and squeeze space as they pass. They do not eliminate the underlying gravitational field. Earth's gravity comes from Earth's mass curving space-time around it. A passing gravitational wave adds a tiny temporary ripple to that curvature. It does not negate or cancel the curvature caused by Earth itself. Think of it this way. The surface of a pond curves downward where a heavy rock displaces water. If you create ripples by throwing pebbles, those ripples do not eliminate the depression around the rock. They pass over it and continue on. The rock remains submerged, the depression remains. Gravitational waves work similarly. They are ripples passing through a curved space-time. They do not flatten or eliminate that curvature. Let us quantify just how weak gravitational waves are when they reach Earth. The first detection in 2015 involved black holes releasing energy equivalent to 3 solar masses. The event occurred 1.3 billion light-years away. The resulting change in LIGO's 4-kilometer arms was about 1/10,000th the diameter of a proton. For comparison, your hair is roughly 1 million times wider than a proton. The gravitational wave moved the LIGO mirrors by a distance 1 billion times smaller than the width of a human hair. Even if gravitational waves from a much closer source reached Earth, the effects would still be tiny. If 2 solar mass black holes merged at the distance of Alpha Centauri about 4 light-years away, the gravitational waves would cause changes in length of perhaps 1 part in 10 to the 15th power, still completely imperceptible without laboratory instruments. To produce gravitational effects noticeable to humans, the source would need to be so close that we would have far bigger problems than gravitational waves. A black hole merger within our solar system would mean gravitational disruption from the black holes themselves long before the merger. The merger would be the least of our concerns. The universe has been producing gravitational waves since its earliest moments. The Big Bang itself likely generated a background of gravitational radiation. Every binary star system in the galaxy produces waves as it orbits. Every supernova sends ripples through space-time. Black hole mergers occur somewhere in the observable universe roughly once every few minutes. We are bathed in gravitational waves constantly. They pass through Earth continuously, yet we never notice because they are so incredibly weak. LIGO only detects the most powerful events, and even those require the most sensitive instruments ever built. If gravitational waves could cause gravity to switch off even briefly, we would see evidence everywhere. Unusual geological formations, gaps in the fossil record, atmospheric anomalies, random objects in strange positions. 4.5 billion years of gravitational wave exposure would have left some trace. There is no such evidence, because gravitational waves do not cause gravity to switch off. The claim is not just false, it contradicts everything we know about physics. Why does the conspiracy use gravitational waves as its mechanism? Probably because gravitational waves are real and recently discovered. They sound exotic and scientific. Most people have heard of them but do not understand what they are. This makes them perfect vehicles for misinformation. They carry the prestige of genuine science while remaining mysterious enough to be filled with fictional properties. The conspiracy also connects gravitational waves to black holes. Black holes are even more exotic in the popular imagination. They are mysterious, powerful, and associated with danger. Combining gravitational waves and black holes creates a scientific-sounding threat that feels plausible to those unfamiliar with the actual physics. But the actual physics is clear. Gravitational waves are real and fascinating. They have taught us extraordinary things about the universe. They do not and cannot cause Earth to lose gravity. Not for 7 seconds. Not for 7 milliseconds. Not at all. The eclipse on August 12, 2026 will be real. The gravitational waves passing through Earth at that moment will be real. Neither will have any effect on whether you remain standing on the ground. In our final chapter, we will engage in a thought experiment. What if somehow Earth did lose gravity temporarily? The conspiracy provides its own timeline of what would happen. Rising objects, chaos, the return of gravity, the fall. Let us examine whether even these secondary claims make physical sense. The answer reveals yet more scientific errors in the conspiracy and teaches us something profound about just how fundamental gravity is to our world. The thought experiment is science fiction, but good science fiction should be consistent with physics. The Project Anchor conspiracy fails even this test. Let us enter the realm of pure imagination. We have established that Earth cannot lose gravity. The physics does not allow it. Gravity is not a switch that can be flipped. It is a fundamental property of mass-curving space-time. But conspiracy theories and science fiction share one valuable trait. They force us to think through scenarios we would otherwise never consider. What if the impossible happened? What would the consequences actually be? The Project Anchor conspiracy provides a specific timeline. Seconds 1 and 2 see everything not secured beginning to rise. Seconds 3 and 4 see continued ascent to heights of 15 to 20 meters. Seconds 5 and 6 bring panic and chaos as people hit ceilings. Second 7 sees gravity return and everything falls. This description gets the physics wrong in almost every particular. Let us examine what would actually happen in this impossible scenario. The first error is the assumption that things would float gently upward like balloons. This misunderstands the relationship between gravity and motion. Right now you are moving. Even if you feel stationary, you're riding on a planet that rotates on its axis at roughly 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. You're also orbiting the Sun at roughly 67,000 miles per hour, and the solar system is orbiting the galactic center at roughly 500,000 miles per hour. You do not feel these motions because everything around you moves together. There is no relative motion to notice. Gravity keeps you attached to Earth's surface as it rotates. Without gravity, you would not suddenly become stationary while Earth moved beneath you. Instead, you would continue moving in whatever direction you were already moving at the moment gravity ceased. The key principle is inertia. Objects in motion stay in motion unless acted upon by a force. When gravity disappears, you lose the force holding you to the spinning Earth. You would continue moving in a straight line tangent to Earth's surface at the velocity you had at that moment. Earth, meanwhile, would continue rotating. What would this feel like? You would not feel yourself rising. You would feel Earth dropping away from you. The ground would seem to fall out from under your feet as the planet continued its rotation while you travelled, in a straight line. The speed of this separation depends on your latitude. At the equator, Earth's surface moves at roughly 1,000 miles per hour due to rotation. At the poles, there is almost no rotational velocity. But anywhere in between, you would find yourself separated from the ground almost instantly as your straight-line motion diverged from the curved surface of the spinning planet. Within the first second, you would not rise 15 to 20 meters. The separation would depend on complex geometry involving your latitude, your starting velocity, and the curvature of Earth's surface. But the point is that you would not float gently upward. You would be thrown tangentially as your inertia carried you in a direction Earth no longer shared. The second major error involves the atmosphere. Air is held to Earth by gravity just like everything else. If gravity disappeared, the atmosphere would begin dispersing into space immediately. Air molecules move at speeds averaging roughly 1,000 miles per hour at room temperature. Without gravity to hold them down, they would scatter outward. You would notice this almost immediately. The air pressure would begin dropping. Your ears would pop as if you had suddenly ascended to a high mountain. Within seconds, the air would become noticeably thinner. You would feel it being pulled from your lungs. Breathing would become difficult, then impossible. Physicist Philip Metzger of the University of Central Florida described this scenario. The air would be getting thinner and thinner almost immediately. You would feel the air sucked out of your lungs. Your ears would pop like you have gone up to a high mountain. Within a rather short amount of time, the air pressure would become so low that you would lose consciousness. This would happen well before the 7 seconds were up. You would not be awake to experience gravity returning. The third error involves water. Oceans, rivers, and lakes are held in their beds by gravity. Without gravity, all that water would begin to lift away from Earth, not gently but explosively. Water has surface tension and cohesion that would cause it to form enormous floating blobs. The atmosphere would fill with water vapor and suspended liquid. Anyone near a body of water would find themselves engulfed in chaos. Swimming pools would empty upward. Bath water would escape its tub. Even the water in your body would begin behaving strangely, though the 7-second time frame is too short for serious physiological effects from this. The fourth error concerns the survival protocol. The conspiracy advises staying indoors with a low ceiling lying face down and holding onto something secured. This advice assumes you would float upward gently enough that a ceiling would stop you, and holding on would keep you in place. Neither is true. You would not float upward. You would be thrown tangentially by your own inertia. A ceiling would not save you because your motion would not be perpendicular to the floor. Holding on to something might help if that something were truly secured, but most furniture and fixtures are only held in place by their own weight and friction. Without gravity, they would move too. In reality, the only thing that might help would be being inside a completely sealed enclosure with air supply, independent of the outside atmosphere. Even then, you would be tossed around as Earth's rotation carried the enclosure in a direction your body did not follow. Now let's consider what happens when gravity returns. The conspiracy describes everything falling from height with 40 to 60 million casualties. This estimate seems oddly low. If everyone and everything outdoors were lifted 15 to 20 meters and then dropped, the casualties would vastly exceed 60 million. Billions of people would be outdoors at any given moment across the globe. A fall from even 10 meters is typically fatal or severely injurious. The mathematics of the conspiracy's own scenario do not support its casualty estimate. But the scenario itself is wrong. You would not be neatly suspended 15 meters above your starting position. You would be somewhere else, entirely carried by your tangential velocity during the 7 seconds. When gravity returned, you might be higher or lower than where you started depending on the geometry. You might have collided with objects or buildings during your trajectory. You might have lost consciousness from oxygen deprivation. Furthermore, objects that had been moving when gravity ceased would continue moving. Cars traveling at highway speeds would become projectiles. Aircraft would continue on ballistic trajectories. Ships would lift from the water, carrying everything on board into chaos. The infrastructure damage would be far more extensive than the conspiracy imagines. Let us expand the thought experiment further. What would happen to Earth itself? Earth is not a solid, rigid sphere. It is a dynamic system with a liquid outer core, a partly molten mantle, and a thin, solid crust floating on top. Gravity holds this system together. The immense pressures in Earth's interior exist because the weight of overlying material compresses everything beneath it. Without gravity, those pressures would release. The molten material in Earth's interior would expand. The crust would begin to buckle and fracture. Volcanic activity would potentially become catastrophic. As magma found new pathways to the surface, the entire planet would begin to decompress. 7 seconds might not be enough time for the planet to fly apart completely, but it would certainly initiate processes that would continue after gravity returned. Earthquakes on a scale never before experienced. Volcanic eruptions from newly opened fissures. Tsunamis as the oceans fell back into basins that had shifted and cracked. The planet would not simply return to normal when gravity came back. It would return to a new normal. A damaged, wounded Earth that would take geological ages to stabilize. The cascade effects extend beyond the physical. Consider the infrastructure of civilization. Power plants, water treatment facilities, transportation networks, communication systems, supply chains. All of these depend on gravity working consistently. Transformers at power plants would be damaged or destroyed. Cooling systems would fail. Nuclear reactors would face emergency situations as coolant circulation failed even briefly. The electrical grid would collapse across entire continents. Water systems depend on gravity for flow. Without gravity, even briefly pipes would empty. Air would enter the system, and restarting service would require purging and repressurization across millions of miles of infrastructure. Transportation would halt completely, not just during the 7 seconds, but afterward as roads buckled, runways cracked, and rails warped. Every vehicle caught moving would crash. Every plane in the air would face catastrophe. The economic collapse described in the conspiracy would be real, but the 10-year estimate seems optimistic. Rebuilding after such an event would take generations, assuming the survivors had the capacity to rebuild at all. Food production would fail. Crops cannot survive having their root systems torn from soil. Livestock would be killed or scattered. Stored food would be contaminated or inaccessible. Famine would follow. Medical systems would collapse. Hospitals depend on electricity and water and supply chains. The injured from the event itself would overwhelm whatever capacity remained. Chronic conditions requiring ongoing treatment would become death sentences. Communication would fail. Cell towers would be damaged. Internet infrastructure would be disrupted. Satellite systems would face their own crises as the gravitational perturbation affected orbital mechanics. In short, a 7-second loss of gravity would not kill 40 to 60 million people. It would potentially end civilization as we know it. The survivors would inherit a broken world struggling to maintain the basics of survival, let alone rebuild the complexity we currently enjoy. This is why gravity matters. Not because we think about it, but because everything depends on it. Every assumption we make about the stability of the ground beneath our feet, every system we have built, every plan we make for the future, all of it rests on gravity working exactly as it always has. The good news: gravity will keep working exactly as it always has. The thought experiment reveals the absurdity of the conspiracy in another way. If such an event were actually predicted, no $89 billion bunker program would be adequate. The surface of the entire planet would be devastated. Underground bunkers would face their own catastrophes as geological forces acted on surrounding rock. The survival protocol of lying on the floor would be laughably insufficient against the actual forces involved. The conspiracy underestimates its own scenario because its creators did not understand the physics. They imagine a gentle lifting and falling. The reality would be violent, chaotic, and civilization ending. There is no preparing for such an event because no preparation could be adequate. Fortunately, there is nothing to prepare for. August 12th, 2026 will arrive. The eclipse will occur. Gravity will behave exactly as it has for 4.5 billion years. The ground will remain beneath your feet. The atmosphere will remain around you. The oceans will stay in their basins. You can watch the eclipse if you are in its path. You can marvel at the cosmos doing exactly what celestial mechanics predicts. And you can remember that real science provides real understanding. Understanding that lets us predict eclipses decades in advance. Understanding that lets us detect gravitational waves from 1 billion light years away. Understanding that tells us with absolute confidence that Earth's gravity is not going anywhere. The conspiracy is false. The science is beautiful. And the universe continues operating according to rules we have spent centuries learning to understand.